Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Craig Wessels from a Yank on the Footy here. I'm uploading this episode on April the 25th here in the United States. By the time those of you in Australia get an opportunity to listen, it will be the 26th or later. That doesn't lessen for me the understanding of just how important April the 25th is to those of you listening in Australia. I know that the events of this year have precluded you from participating in your normal Anzac Day activities. Here is to hoping that the Stand at Dawn events that you experienced yesterday were able to reach you wherever you reside. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 21 of A Yank on the Footy. I'm Craig Wessels from Sandusky, Ohio, and I'm thrilled that my guest is able to join us today. Gavin Ingham is a comedian from Melbourne who happens to be a huge footy supporter as well, and I'm glad that he was able to take time out of his Friday evening to sit down for a chat. Welcome to the podcast, Gavin.
Craig, thank you so much from down under. It's currently Friday here, Friday night, so it's Friday morning for you?
It is Friday morning. Yep, I'm getting ready to start my my work day. I stayed up watching the first round of the NFL draft last night, and
yes.
went to bed at about 1 o'clock and got up at 5:30. Well,
jeez.
Yeah, my bladder got me up at 5:30.
Oh, good. Yes. Well,
yeah,
we're in the future here.
How it
We're
works,
Friday night. We're in the future down here, so not much has changed, I think, with Corona lockdown. I think everything's pretty much the same at the moment, day to day, Groundhog Day.
Yeah, we're looking at some things opening up here, and we'll see what happens. I'm just kind of staying hunkered down and sequestered away just to stay on the safe side.
Absolutely.
So now you've found a unique way to go about doing things. You've actually been able to combine two terrific aspects of society into your career, both comedy and sports. Now, and we're going to dive into the comedy aspect of this as we go on through the discussion today. But you have figured out a way to take your sense of humor and combine it with something that you love, that being the AFL. And you are somebody who barracks for which club? Why don't you tell us about what your background is as far as footy goes?
Okay, well, from a very early age, I was diagnosed with being a Collingwood supporter. My silly father was a Collingwood supporter, and that unfortunately gets passed down through the blood. So I had no choice, and to this day, I think most Collingwood supporters, or a lot of Collingwood supporters, hate the club, but they kind of love the club just a little bit more than they hate the club, and get frustrated with some of the things that happen. But yeah, certainly am a Collingwood supporter through and through. And it does give you you have no choice but to have a sense of humour when it comes to being a Collingwood supporter. We've got the most grand final appearances, and we've got the most finals and grand final losses in our history. So you have to kind of laugh when it comes to Collingwood and football. To get you through to the next. There's always next week. There's always next year. As far as it goes with Collingwood.
So what? Yeah, is it the grand final losses? Is that what leads to that love-hate relationship?
Yeah, I think it does. I run a historical walking tour about the Collingwood Football Club, and that's something I found. I've been running for about 6 years, and there's a lot of funny stories, a lot of in the history of Collingwood. And as a Collingwood supporter, you certainly you come across a lot of these these things. And through my research into putting into making a walking tour about the history of the club, certainly found a lot more of those things. And and we found that a lot of the supporters, Collingwood supporters that come along, they kind of can't talk about the grand final losses. And I know for myself, the grand final in 1990, I would have been, I would have been about 11 years old, 11, 12 years old, 1990, and I wasn't really into football that much. So I don't really have a living experience of that game. My father did. I just wasn't really into it. I was a bit rebellious and not really wanting a part of it. But of course, the illness catches you, and it's not until after. And so I've rewatched the 1990 grand final. That was the grand final that it was the first premiership win in 32 years. Collingwood had been in 9 grand finals and not won a single one, and some of those were consecutive, and the club had gone through some horrific times. And so from 1958 through till 1989, the club had not won a grand final. And so 1990 came along, and still to this day, when I watch the replay, I watch it every couple of years, I'm still not sure Collingwood's actually going to win that game, because it's a seesaw match, and just the feeling, the collywobbles when Collingwood gets into a winning position where we're not guaranteed a win. And the biggest one is the greatest grand final in AFL history is 1970, was against Collingwood Carlton, and Collingwood were 44 points up at halftime and 30 something points up at 3/4 time. I'm not too sure of that score line, but Collingwood lost by 10 points. In that grand final, we lost the unlosable grand final. So it really does shape you as a Collingwood supporter, all the losses. And, I think most of us wouldn't have it any other way. You have to love the club for other reasons.
So you're saying that, you said that was 1970. There was a 40-point swing in the fourth quarter? Wow.
Well, it would. Oh, actually, it would be. Would it be 54 points, because we were up by 44 and we lost by 10. So that's 54 points. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a collapse. That's okay. So I guess I can understand that love-hate relationship a little bit more now. Then that that's here in the States, that's but as you said, that they've made it to more finals. So the fact that you get there is something to be proud of, because today there's 16 other teams that would trade places with you.
Well, I don't know if there would be 16 other teams. There's a bit of a thing in AFL in Melbourne about football fans. They'll say that there's only 2 teams in the AFL. There's Collingwood and ABC, and that stands for anyone but Collingwood. I think there's just enough supporters to outnumber the people that hate Collingwood. So I don't know if there would be many teams that would trade, but we certainly. I think we've got the most finals wins, and arguably, and this is a contentious stat, but equal amount of grand final wins, because Collingwood bloody invented grand finals. The first ever grand final was created because of Collingwood back in 1896, and then that spurned off. There was tensions with the league and the top teams back then. When it was the VFA, and that spurned off them starting a new league, the VFL, which turned into the AFL. So over 100 years ago, we created grand finals, the first grand final ever. So so that's we class it as 16 wins. It's a bit of a contentious number. So we've got the most finals wins, certainly, but by far the most finals losses. So yeah, I mean you're in Ohio. You're I think you mentioned you're a Cleveland Browns supporter. Is that correct?
I am. So I would. That's why I was mentioning the fact that I would have loved to have my team get to a Super Bowl. I was at least alive the last time the Browns won the NFL championship. Of course, I was in diapers when it happened. It was 1964. I was a year old, and I hope I'm not in diapers the next time they win the championship, quite frankly. Because
do you think that
who knows?
would that make LeBron come back to Cleveland, you think?
Oh, I don't know. I think that ship has sailed. I think that LeBron is. I think he's perfectly content being in California now. I have a feeling we're going to see a bit of a transition, from LeBron being the basketball player to becoming the media mogul, whether it be movies, television, that type of thing. I think he's going to seamlessly transition to that kind of thing once he leaves basketball. And he'll probably own a team at some time in the future too.
Let's hope so.
I think he'll follow.
Like a good man.
Yes, pretty savvy business guy now. So yeah, so I would love to have the Browns be in the Super Bowl. I'd love to have them win, but just to say that they actually got there would be be a nice change of pace.
Yeah, I think there's some similarities. I think from what I understand, Browns fans are pretty fanatical. Put the fan in fanatical, and Collingwood supporters are that as well. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nickname is having one eyes, because they're very. Other people use expletives, but we just like to say passionate. They're very passionate about their football club.
Yes.
Collingwood supporters.
So and I've heard the one-eyed thing before, and I don't necessarily know what that reference is. How did that term come about? Do you know?
I'm not too sure about the history, but I think it's just, and I don't think it's football specific. I think it's anyone who's got one eye, is very focused and can't see anything else.
Okay.
Well, maybe I don't know. Maybe if it's Collingwood, maybe we're a bit like pirates, and pillage people and not too hospitable sometimes. Maybe that's where it comes from.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I didn't know if it was just like that the second eye is kind of squinting, and that you're just really they're giving you kind of the the really nasty look through the one eye that's open. I didn't know if that's where it came from. So hey, folks,
no doubt.
if you know the background on that, send me an email, and let me know, or send me something on Twitter, because I don't know that, but I've heard it. In fact, there's somebody who's actually a cat supporter who does a podcast that has that term in the name of their podcast as well.
Other clubs get it, but certainly Collingwood is probably the most one-eyed, I guess. That's a question I do have for you, Craig. Why? I noticed you're a cat supporter. How did that come about, and why do you not support Collingwood? I'm very dismayed.
Well, you're dismayed, huh?
Yes. Okay. I can't understand why anyone would not support Collingwood.
Well, I actually talk about this in the first episode of my podcast when I put it out back in December. And that's okay. I don't mind mentioning it again, because I spent about a year watching games here in the States trying to figure out who I wanted to support. And I had actually narrowed it down to 3 different clubs. And I'll let you know the Pies were one of the 3.
And the Collingwood VFL and then Collingwood AFLW. They were the other 2?
No, Brisbane was the 3rd. Because I thought I looked at them as kind of being an up and coming team, and I actually sought advice from people online, and they were saying that if you were, and this gets back to what you had said about the Pies being in so many premierships, that somebody said, well, if you come in and you become a Magpie supporter, it's almost like coming into becoming a baseball fan and saying you want to be a New York Yankees fan.
Yeah,
that they're seemingly always in the World Series, that they're there all the time.
Like Kevin Durant going to the Warriors. Yeah, okay, I get you.
There you go. Yes, but I mentioned it back in episode 1. Watching the games, and I ran across a player that I just that to me just jumped off the screen when I was watching him play, and it's and unfortunately he's had a lot of injuries that he's not been able to stay healthy, and it's Nakia Cockatoo.
Oh, he's a gun. He's an absolute gun.
Yeah, when he is healthy, he is he just, to me, he jumped off the TV screen as somebody who just was somebody that played at this frenetic pace. He looking at it now, he reminds me, of a bigger version of Anthony McDonald, Tip and Woody. In terms of just
I love
the
Tipper.
speed that he plays the game. But
Yeah.
but he's got I think he's got another 4 or 5 inches of height and probably another 20 or 30 pounds of muscle that he looked to be untackleable, that you couldn't put him on the ground.
Yeah,
And
right.
now of course he can't stay healthy, unfortunately. I'm hoping that if one thing comes out of this whole lockdown thing is that he gets his body right and can come out and help contribute, because that might mitigate the loss of Tim Kelly a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. My nana, my grandma was a Cat supporter, so I do have a soft spot for Geelong.
I'm assuming that was your mom's mom.
Yeah, it was actually. Yeah, my dad's
Okay,
family's the Collingwood supporting family.
Okay, yeah, so that's how I ended up becoming a Pies fan, and part of it was also, and maybe I'm a little misguided on this, and it was maybe I was a little ignorant when I went into this, was that I kind of was looking at supporting a team that wasn't necessarily in the maelstrom of the 9 teams that were in Melbourne. Because I was looking at something that was kind of how I was going into it. I mean, I created spreadsheets and went back and looked at overall team records over the span. I did this. I mean, I still have these documents in my Google Drive. I spent months figuring out who do I want to support, and I've run into some great supporters of other clubs, but there've been some great outreach that I've had with Cat supporters as well. But I one of the things I'm thrilled about is the fact that coming into the game and being a Cats fan, and I've mentioned this in other episodes, that I don't have that birthright hatred of other teams. I know that as a Cat supporter, I'm supposed to hate Hawthorn. Yeah, I don't have decades of that in my DNA. I like watching good footy. So I mean, I can appreciate good footy being played. Whether if it's Tom Mitchell having a phenomenal game, or if it's Lance Franklin or Eddie Betts. I don't hate any teams. So I want to see Geelong do well.
Maybe that's the next level, I think, for you, because you gotta love your team, but there's other teams you gotta hate. But I also have to say, I think you're doing a lot better than probably some other foreign footy loving fanatics. One thing you go through in your early experience of being a footy fan is you get the spreadsheets and you get the paper out, and you scientifically, as a 12-year-old, 15-year-old, 18-year-old, 48-year-old, work out why your team is the best and who the best player is based on statistics. And it's always got to come back to the umpires. The umpires were very bad on that day. Or if it's Collingwood, 2011 Meatloaf. So you have to go through a period of the spreadsheet, the scientific analysis, your scientific analysis, not real scientific analysis, your own scientific analysis of why your team is the greatest. So I think you're halfway there. Craig.
You have to justify it. And I have heard I don't think it qualifies as a legend, but I have heard the lore of the Meatloaf performance, and I actually watched the video about a month ago.
Yes.
And that was god awful. I mean, I have probably 3 or 4 Meatloaf CDs. I've got every Bat Out of Hell album that he put out, but that was pathetic.
Well, at the time, watching it in real time, I don't think it was bad. Straight away at the end of his medley or whatever, his deadly. I'll say deadly. It wasn't medley. It was quite deadly. Yeah. That's when you thought, is it just whoever you were with? You'd looked at them and thought, you said to them, was that really bad? Because at the time it was just very confusing, because everyone on TV was like loving it, and but I was thinking, this is Meatloaf. Can't be bad. But apparently it was horrific.
I have to, and this is maybe something that, I don't know if they've adjusted since then. I've heard that Jack Rewald performed with
Killers.
was it the Killers?
Yeah.
Okay, did but it looked like at the grand final where Meatloaf performed that they basically just put like a platform over some seats and had them up in the stands performing.
Well, around that time they sort of did that. It wasn't as temporary as what it looks like. It was kind of an official sort of thing from the game. They started putting bands on before before the game and at halftime, and made a bit more of a fan friendly experience. And so that was the section. And I think that platform is still sort of there. I can't remember the last time I was at the MCG late last year.
Okay. So I didn't know. Maybe that's something that the NFL has figured out a way to during their Super Bowl halftime performances, which I don't watch because I don't need to watch what some groups of think tank people in Hollywood decide. Well, let's put these performers together. Let's have Aerosmith and Britney Spears perform together because they would naturally go on tour with one another. But they're able to put up a stage in a relatively short period of time and then deconstruct it and move it out of the way. I was just wondering, is that something that they could consider doing out on the grounds at the MCG? Put the stage out on the field, have the performance go on, and then be able to get it all. I don't know. It just looked like it was like an by the way kind of thing.
They have in the past.
It
did look. It was early on, I guess, back then when they were doing that. So it could have. What it looked like could have actually been what it looked like. It could have looked like it was temporarily put up the night before. But if you go on to the grounds is much bigger than an NFL field. But if you go on a YouTube and have a look at Angry Anderson, he's a very famous old Australian. He's kind of like the Meatloaf for Australia. Very old 70s, 80s rocker. He's very short, very bald, and he's got tats before tats were cool. His name's Angry Anderson. I don't actually know what his real name is, or maybe that is actually his real name. His parents called him Angry. I'm not too sure. You wouldn't be surprised either way. He turned up in the old Adam West TV Batman Batmobile onto the middle of the ground and sang, I can't remember, I don't know if it was even one of his songs or a famous song that Australians would know, but it was truly horrific. And you'll see it on YouTube, and they keep cutting away to other people on the field with these bewildered looks on their faces, because it's just, even though we understand as Australians and footy fans, we would understand every single ingredient. The Batmobile, oh, that's awesome. Angry Anderson, oh my God, he's like the president of Australia. All these things, and a rock song, oh, this is amazing. But as a meal, the flavors did not really combine. And so if you want a taste of meatloaf from 20 years, 30 years prior, give it a watch. Angry Anderson.
I'll find that and I will link to it, and in the show notes I've already put on there. I'm gonna include the Meatloaf video. So those of you who are listening here in the States, if you're a Meatloaf fan, you're gonna find out that this was not one of his better performances.
You might turn away your listenership if the podcast is booming. I don't know if you should do that.
Yeah, but I think they should see. I think they should see what we're talking about as well, because
absolutely.
I saw Aerosmith perform back in 1985 when I was in the Navy, and it was I don't know if you're an Aerosmith fan at all, but the two guitarists, yeah. But Joe Perry, and I can't think of the other guitarist's name right now. The two of them had left the band at this point in time, and so they had two new guitarists, and they didn't know. It didn't seem like they knew any of the old music. They were horrible. They were horrible. It was as though they had gone and picked a couple people at random out of the crowd and said, "Here, you go up here and pretend to play this for an hour and a half."
Oh,
and I'm not. Yeah, it was, and Steven Tyler was not on his A game. And I actually almost died coming home from that concert. So it was a memorable night.
Jeez. Meatloaf
we
gave you some PTSD.
yes, that was yeah.
Oh, the name of the
It
song
was
Angry Anderson was singing was called "Bound for Glory." So the intention was
okay.
right, was good. But it's in this
I'll have
Batmobile with AFL logo on the side, and it's not the exact Batmobile, but it's 1991, so it was the height of like the
George
Tim
Clooney
Burton.
Batman type thing.
Oh yeah, a
Okay,
bit before the first Batman movie that came out. Sorry, so why not bring
Michael Keaton.
yeah, Michael Keaton. Why not bring a sky blue old version of the Batmobile on that's not even the Batmobile, and it's got a pointy nose and looks like a hydrofoil boat car thing, and yeah, anyway, you can check it out.
Is that in a museum somewhere now, or did they?
I think
that
it was burnt straight away after the match. It was
okay?
burnt. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I didn't know if that was something you showed on your walking tours or not.
No, certainly not.
We're gonna jog past this. We don't want to remember this at all.
Yeah, well, it's not Collingwood related,
right
so
moving.
that's a grand final we weren't
Okay.
in, so we're definitely not going there.
Okay. So you became a Pies supporter. Hopefully, you're not going to hold against me the fact that I chose to be a Cat supporter. I could have very easily gone with the Pies because you did have the lone American at that point in time playing with them as I was making that decision, which I didn't realize that at the time. I didn't realize Mason Cox was an American at that time. So
yeah, we had another
have...
American previously too, Shea McNamara, who was kind of a similar. He was about 6'8", so he wasn't as gigantic as the Coxzilla, but yeah, he was kind of a ruckman sort of forward, and came from a basketball background as well. I think he played some NCAA. I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. I don't. Yeah, and he was just in our seconds in the VFL. Didn't ever get to. I think he played some preseason matches, but I don't think he got to the top. But yeah, he was the second American. Mason Cox is the second American that Collingwood's had.
So has that nickname caught on in Australia after that? Mason Cox did that interview with Pat McAfee back here in the States, and Pat, if you're listening, I'd love to talk footy with you. Has that name caught on there?
Oh, well, I think Pat might have.
Or was that something that was already happening?
Yeah, it was already happening. There's shirts out.
Okay.
Actually took, I contacted when was it? It was 2000 and it wasn't last year. When was it? It was, I think, the year before. Mason Cox's parents were out here. That's right. I'm a bit brain dead at the moment. Yeah, it was like not last year, the year before. Mason Cox's parents were out here about 20 times, and they were here for grand final week. And and I just tweeted him, and from the Collingwood Footy Tour account. That's collingwoodfootytour.com for those listening at home. If you want to check us out. And tweeted him and said, "Do you want to come on a walk? Complimentary walk?" And he said, "Well, why not? We're free on, I think it was a Thursday." And him and his wife, the parents of Mason, Phil and Jay. Hello, Phil and Jay, if you're listening. Came on a walk, and they were perfectly, absolutely, just wonderful. They knew quite a lot of the history. And I said to him at the end, I said, we start at Victoria Park, the home ground of Collingwood, and the spiritual home ground, no longer there, and walk around the suburb and talk about the history, and finish up back at Victoria Park. And we ended up on the ground and talk about, finish up the tour and the history and bring it to modern times. And I said, I have an old Sharon football, and it's old leather. So it was about the 70s, I think this ball is. And it's one of those footballs that looks like them you see on back in that era. It looks like they're made out of wood. And they're very hard, and especially in the middle of winter and it's wet and kicking that, like you'd break your foot. So football players are tough. Right. Or punching it. Like, whose idea was that? It doesn't hurt enough. So let's punch the ball, this piece of wood. And so I pull out that and I talk about the history, and I said to him, there's a bit of a cultural difference between Australians and Americans. And I sort of said, they've been here a few times, and Mason really fits in with Australian culture. He just gives banter, talks banter to people, and we love him. I said to them, can you give him a bit of a stitch up, like give him some advice? So I want to video this and put this out on our socials. And his dad, Phil, was like, sure, got the ball, and he totally stitched up Mason, said, you probably don't know too much about football. I'm just going to give you some advice. And so he kicked the ball, and he tried to kick this goal, and it went nowhere and bounced around. It was hilarious. And then he gave a really heartwarming message to his son. And they were stupendous. But yeah, so we've really adopted Mason, and there's Australians love to give nicknames, and so we've Coxilla's probably one that's really stuck. But we've, Big Mace, and what's funny is you go to a Collingwood match, and now whenever he gets the ball, like he gets a mark, and he's can sit there for 30 seconds and choose what he wants to do. The chant starts,
right.
USA, USA, and the American flags come out. And these aren't Americans; these are Australians who are half taking the piss, half going, "We effing love you," So USA starts up. It's the weirdest thing, but it's phenomenal. It's amazing.
Yeah, and he has been approved to become an Australian citizen now too.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah, he has fully embraced Australia. I mean, it's he is,
even his accent sometimes on Collingwood.
Yes, I have seen
promotional, I say propaganda. Their videos. He sounds Australian, and I'm a really bit confused. I don't think he's putting it on, but it's a hard accent to do if you don't know how to do accents, or you're not too familiar. It's hard. It sounds wrong.
Right.
Probably the same way Australians sound when they do American accents. But he sounds, like he speaks lazy, and that's exactly sounds Australian. So fits in well.
Well, that's I wouldn't try to do any kind of an accent, because I don't. That's not, certainly not trying to offend anybody doing that sort of thing at all. But I have noticed that in a couple of interviews where he will slide in and out of. I think he's from Texas. He'll slide in and out of Texas into Australia. Now, are there, while we're on this, and I don't know this to be the case, are there different accents in different parts of Australia?
Yeah, there absolutely is now. For the longest time, we didn't, because we never really traveled or lived in other places. But since we've sort of matured a bit as a culture and a country, people will live in other parts of Australia or move for work, and certainly with the influx of a lot of different migrants from around the world, our accent has changed. And so the further north and west rural you go, the more you'll hear that sort of, I guess, that stereotypical Crocodile Dundee cartoon version of the Australian dialect, I guess, and even Australians who go to some places up in sort of North Queensland or in the outback will think that the person is taking the piss, or they're not seriously like that, but they really are, and so they'll speak slow, and the sentence will be one word. So it'll be sort of like, oh yeah, how you going? Yeah, I was going around the world. Yeah, that's what they'll say. It's one word. It's one word. There's all these different words, but it's all put together and turns into one word.
It's all run onto. Okay.
But certainly in Queensland, which is on the East Coast, most of the population is on the East Coast. On the East Coast, northern, from middle of Australia upwards, which I guess it's reversed to America. I guess politically it's a bit, if you reverse it, so north of Australia is probably, it's a bit of a cliche to say this, and it's not accurate 100%, but if you just took a snapshot, then it would be safe to say, a safe assumption sort of would be that the north of Australia is similar to the south of America, sort of lifestyle, politically, probably.
It's more laid back.
Yeah, very much laid back, and so they'll sort of pay out Sydney and Melbourne, which are the sort of world cities, and a lot of different ethnicities. So they will they'll be a little bit rural, their accent, but generally they'll finish the end of the sentence on an upward inflection. Everything they say at the end of every sentence will just go up at the end for no reason. It's really odd when you hear it, you can never unhear it. Everything just sounds a bit like that. And we kind of think it's because we're Australians and we're, the little brother of the world, so we're always asking for approval. That's kind of the thought behind that. So, and I'll say A, not like in a Canadian way, but certainly just A at the end. It's like a breath.
So it's almost like it's it's ending in a question. And you mentioned like the little brother. It's almost like thank you, sir. May I have another? Or more, please. Like the what was that? Is that Oliver Twist?
Could have some more.
I think it's Oliver Twist.
That's Queensland is regarded as a bit backwards, and probably some are and some aren't. So I have family up there, so Sydney, a real melting pot of different ethnicities. So you'll get sort of a Mediterranean in some sort of accent. They speak very fast, and in Sydney, and can kind of sound not aggressive, but kind of aggressive. Melbourne is probably I don't know. My accent's a mix. I grew up in Sydney, then lived in Brisbane, which is the capital of Queensland. Went to university and acting school and things in Brisbane, and then moved to Melbourne. My family's originally from Melbourne, so my accent's not, I guess, indicative of any particular place. But Melbourne can be quite ethnic too, because we have sort of the largest, as I was mentioning to you before, the largest population of Greeks outside of Athens here in Melbourne. And we can be a bit fast, but a bit more cultured, I guess, is probably a way of sounding. Around down the south, in the middle of Australia, is Adelaide, and they've got a very, very white. There's not very many dark-skinned people that live in Adelaide compared to other parts of Australia, and so they're very, I guess, British and posh sounding. So instead of dancing, which is what most people in Australia would say, they would say dancing. Melbourne's a bit Victorian as well. Well, it's in the state of Victoria, little things like word choice. So they'll say castle instead of castle. They'll say dinner or they'll say tea for your nightly meal. And then dinner might be lunch. So word choices are a bit different. But we certainly do have different accents. Yeah, absolutely. Now in Australia.
Okay.
And that's only been since the last, I guess, 30 years. And before that, especially if you listen to 1970s and 50s news, they sounded quite British. Yeah. But then it kind of, it's molded and changed. Yeah.
Okay. So we've definitely gone in kind of a different direction than we had mapped out on here. So
because of Mason Cox.
Yes, exactly. So the fact that Mason Cox has begun to adopt an Australian accent, we've kind of gone off on a slightly different tangent, which is perfectly all right, because it's it's something that I wasn't familiar with, and I'm sure that the listeners here in the U.S. are, who are listening are, let's be honest, most of, well, not most, but a lot of people in the United States probably think that everybody speaks like, as you mentioned early on in that discussion there, that everybody speaks like Crocodile Dundee. Okay. But that's not, that's not the case. That's not the case at all. Cause I've talked to, to a number of different people from Australia during the course of this podcast. And I've picked up different sounds as well in terms of how they go about saying different things. You as a comedian have been able to embrace your the game that you love, and you've actually begun something online called Footy for Dummies.
Yes.
Now, for those of us who have not run across this web series, can you give us an idea of what that talks about? What does Footy for Dummies actually detail and talk about?
Well, first of all, I'll just offer an olive leaf to your country, men and women. The name was not my choice. I didn't choose the name. The company who's producing the series, the web series, Beyond the Game. You can look them up on beyondthegame.tv. It's a Canadian guy, Edris E. He's a massive sports fan, worked massively in hockey in, I think, Montreal, and he's come down to Australia, fallen in love with AFL as well, like a very smart, intelligent person. Loves the game. And he just started making some things, and he picks up some pretty high-profile film and TV work as well. He covered the USA. I don't know if they were the Dream Team, but every American basketball team gets called the Dream Team, I guess, when they came out prior to the World Championships. They came out to Australia and played at Marvel Stadium, 2-game series against our national team. He got to follow them around and with the Boomers as well, our team, and cover them. And he makes some UFC stuff and makes some wonderful online sporting content. And so him and I got talking a number of years ago and decided on making a web series on trying to help Americans and Canadians understand Aussie rules. And so went back and forth quite a bit with the ideas. And so basically it's a how-to guide of understanding Aussie rules football and AFL. And then I've sort of chosen each episode is how to choose a team based on what North American sporting teams you will like, sort of basically NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball are the major teams that I draw upon, and a few ice hockey games, clubs as well. But basically, it's all done very lighthearted. 50% of things that I mention are not true, and 50% of the things are true, and so. There's things in there that are in jokes for Australians because we do have a large Australian audience for that series, and Edris focuses a bit on the Australian audience as well. But basically, the ethos of the episode, lies and facts, are true. So it's really to help you to get a sense of what an AFL club is about. And if that strikes gold with you, then maybe that's the team for you. In the second episode, which is the third episode, because the first episode was just a basic generic AFL, how to understand AFL if you don't understand Aussie rules, AFL. So the third episode, which the second team, I chose Carlton. And in that, I talk about the history of the club, and I talk about that the club was actually birthed in the suburb called Carlton. And the club was called the Carlton Blues. And the reason why they are now known as Carlton is because I think I stole footage of Roosevelt or some American president in the 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s. It was black and white footage, and he was signing a document or something. And I stuck that footage in that part of the episode and said that was the AFL commissioner. I said that I tried to paint that because Carlton are an arch nemesis of my team, Collingwood.
Right.
I'm having an opportunistic strike at Carlton, which is always a fun thing to do, and say that because they have so many losses in their history, that the suburb and the team of Carlton. And they were named that because they supplied half the world's milk supply, cartons. The AFL.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's not true. It's just what I decided to put in there to justify calling them Carlton. The AFL or the VFL back then decided they needed to add a capital L in the middle of their name, so they announced to remind them of how all their losses in their history. So that's why they're now known as Carlton, which is 150 million% fabricated, but it's kind of my fantasy, and it's all to try and subtly get people to choose Collingwood as their team. So anytime I talk about the greats of, in any episode, I'll talk about the greats of Carlton, the greats in my last episode was the Western Bulldogs. I'll choose coaches and players that have played for Collingwood. So fans of that actual club have gotten a bit annoyed that I haven't chosen the actual best players, but it's my way of sort of saying that, the reason why they're the best players is because they've played for Collingwood. So
right.
But it's in all seriousness, it's done lightheartedly, and it is it's never to totally be disrespectful to the team. Part of the culture of AFL is bantering and knowing bad things about their history, so you can have a go at them whenever you see your friends who support those teams. Yeah, so that's basically the gist of it, to help Americans and Canadians choose an AFL team, really.
So is this the point where the Carlton fans mentioned to you that Collingwood has 2 L's in it?
Well, you know what is hilarious? I didn't even consider that, and I'm a bit disappointed that I had not even considered that. But you're a teacher, so you pick up on those things. And what's even funnier is no Carlton supporter has mentioned that. So there you go. Maybe it is true. Maybe it is. No. They're not all that. They're not all that. There's a few milk cartons missing. There's a few mils of milk missing in the milk bottle.
Yes.
That's a very good point. Very good point.
Did and I don't know if this, and it's a sad subject to address here, but for decades here in the United States, we had a history of putting missing children, putting their pictures on the sides of milk cartons at the grocery store. We've got heaps of American TV, so we know what that trope is. Yeah. So I didn't know if that happened there. I didn't know if in Carlton, if they actually then put out the milk cartons, that did they they put, have you seen the win column for us on the side of the milk carton for them then?
The positive attitude was taken last Friday night and hasn't been seen since. Yeah. Yes. No. I did toy with that, but I couldn't fit it in there. Yeah, there was too many. One thing that is true in there is their song. Their song is based on a song called "Lily of Laguna," the club song that they sing if they win a game, which hasn't happened in quite a while. So the players probably don't remember the lyrics of the song. Their song is based on is the tune "Lily of Laguna," which was a minstrel show tune from the United States. It was a song that was used for minstrel shows and blackface. So that's a very interesting thing. And that's I addressed that in the episode, and that's absolutely a truth. So it's up to people to look at the episode and work out what is true and what's not. Hopefully they'll do their own research.
Yeah. Now, I do want to just take a quick second here and, Terry Degani, I know we sat down for an interview here a couple of weeks ago. I'm just having fun here. I'm not going out of my way to denigrate the Blues at all or anything like that. So don't hold this against me. But
no, he does. He does. So I think the equivalent, the Carlton equivalent. He does a tour. I think.
Yeah, he does He does one called the Blues Abroad. Yeah, he does a podcast as well.
Ah, right. Yeah,
so he does a.
Yeah, he does.
So he does a walking tour as well.
Princess Park.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not as often as me. I think it comes up about once or twice a year. But I think it's called the Ghosts of Princess Park. And I think we've messaged each other a few times, but I've never gone on a tour, and he's never come on a Collingwood tour, because a lot of the history covers, overlaps, and as much as Collingwood supporters hate Essendon and Carlton, and sometimes it does get a bit fiery. If there wasn't those clubs, there would be none of your club. So
exactly. You have to be able to have that. You have to be able to have that banter.
Yeah, there's no good without evil. It's Harry Potter and Voldemort, Luke and Anakin all over again.
Okay, well, you lost me with the Harry Potter one, because that's I've never seen a Harry Potter movie before. So I got the Anakin and the Luke part. Yeah. Yes, there you go. That reference I got. And I know who Voldemort is. I know that he's not going to be using as many Kleenex as I've gone through this morning with my stuffy nose. But it's now, how often do your walking tour that you do, how often do you do those during the course of the year?
At the moment, none, because we're all in lockdown here in Australia.
Yeah, I know you're not doing them now, but when there's not a global pandemic happening and the prime minister. Yes, exactly. Yes. So when everything is somewhat normal, how often do they happen?
Yeah. Actually, I'm having a look and doing some research and gauging interest, if maybe turning it into a bit of a virtual tour as well. So I'll let you know, and that way Americans could come on the Collingwood Football Club history tour.
that'd be
sort of
cool.
like a
That'd be cool.
pay to watch sort of thing online. I've got to work out how to do that. That's sort of an idea, but can't even get out of the suburb at the moment. Otherwise, the police will be on top of you. It all depends. It all depends, Craig. It depends on what's going on with the league. If the spirit is fairly good with AFL a few years ago, and this is not. I'm not having an opportunistic swipe at this club, but a few years ago there was the Essendon scandal that happened, and in the media there was quite a lot of it was like COVID-19. It was just on the news all the time, especially here in Melbourne. It was just everywhere. Or anytime you turn on, there was some new news about the situation, and generally it really wasn't any new news. It was just to try and sell newspapers. And so because of that, people really did get a bit fatigued about football a little bit, and I found my numbers dropped off a little bit. Even though it's Essendon, it still affected everyone else. But it depends. Like each year is different. I've run it for about 6 or 7 years, and so sometimes in some summers there's quite a lot of people, and sometimes some summers there's just no supporters. But generally, as we get into the start of the season, there's a bit of a pickup. So it can be. I really can't give you a number, but it can be 3 times a week. It can be 3 times a month. It can be once a month. It really depends, and usually every weekend, every second weekend. I usually get some people coming along, and even the typical person who comes on the tour, you would think it would be a Collingwood supporter and of a certain age, but these days, like I get half the people that come on the tour aren't Collingwood supporters, and half of those people aren't even football fans. They just want to come in, because I talk about a lot of the other history in Melbourne and how that relates.
Okay.
It's not just about Collingwood, it's about other teams, about football, and also just about Melbourne history as well, because it all is sort of the same history, like one of the forefathers of the Collingwood Football Club, it was named Mr. T.W. Sharon. His name's on the bloody football, so
yes,
so, and a lot of history that happened in the league changed because of Collingwood, so people come along to find out that, so. Yeah.
Yes, I'm as I've made public here on a couple of the episodes. I'm somebody who's now 21 episodes into a podcast about Australian football, and I've never actually seen a Sharon in person.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
wow.
Yes, that's like I think it's like going to a priest for marriage advice.
That's right. Well, you have to, at one stage you've got to get your hands on one, and hopefully a new one, because there's a certain smell with a new football. It's like a new car smell. It's very iconic. It's very specific smell. It's hard to describe, but it's a beautiful smell.
Yeah, I've several places online. I've put them into the cart to buy one, and just have not pulled the trigger on it yet. So
it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
Well, I doubt that I would buy one of the actual game day ones, because those are, I've seen those, they're like $180.
Yeah.
That would not go over very well at my house if I was to plunk down $180 for something, and my wife would remind me, "You're not even gonna get off the couch and go kick that thing around at all. What are you spending that money for?" So
it's our new child.
I don't. That would. Well, yeah, that's true, because we are pretty much empty nesters. My youngest is in college, so she's at home finishing up her first year of college. Yeah. So you besides doing the web series that you're doing, you do work as a comic as well. You do work as a comedian as well.
Yes.
And when there are not global pandemics, so we don't have to go back that direction again. How busy do you stay doing that? Is that something that you're doing a lot, or is that
basically,
or are you kind of supplementing?
Basically full time, but a lot of my other work is around performing or comedy. I also work a lot in sport as well. So I work as a court announcer for basketball, the professional leagues out here, the NBL, WNBL, and sort of like the VFL equivalent, the NBL one. and I work for a club called Melbourne Tigers, which a lot of great Australian basketballers have come out, sort of one of the world's oldest basketball clubs. Started in 1931, and they're still going to this day, the Melbourne Tigers. And Andrew Gaze, who's kind of like our Larry Bird or Michael Jordan, his family is very much entwined with the club. So I work in basketball. I was the ground announcer. I'm the ground announcer and outdoor announcer at Marvel Stadium, which is the second biggest stadium here in Melbourne, where a lot of the other clubs play. North Melbourne, Western Bulldogs, Essendon. I can't remember some other teams, other clubs, and also some other clubs. When the MCGs, there's a clash on the calendar, they'll come and play at Marvel Stadium. And so I work outside the stadium as, I think, sort of like spruiking or outdoor announcing. So when punters or Barrackers supporters are coming to the game, so it can be up to 30 to 50,000 people each on a Friday night, Saturday afternoon, or a Sunday afternoon, are coming to the game. I'm out the front giving directions and telling stupid jokes to keep people laughing as they come into the stadium. Certainly wouldn't do much comedy. Certainly would do no comedy actually inside the stadium as the ground announcer. That would be a bit not good if I was to take that lightly. This year I was working in the AFLW as well. For St Kilda, I was their ground announcer there at Moorabbin. It was the first time they went back to that suburban ground for 27 years, and I was fortunate enough to be the ground announcer for the AFLW and see it was their first year in the competition as well, and saw some amazing historical things happen. And as well as the Australian Open, I'm an announcer there as well. That's sort of the announcement.
Tennis tournament.
Yeah, here in Melbourne. And so
wow.
Yeah, it's sort of I really enjoy it. Get to chuck jokes in and done in a light bantery way, and also give it's a really effective way to give out information. Like a gate, especially at Marvel Stadium, a gate might be full with a lot of people at that point in time, and I need to divert like Moses, part the Red Sea, get the crowd going to a different direction, and if you can tell a joke or a light-hearted piece of information and get them laughing, they'll listen, and then they'll certainly obey what you need them to do, because it's about safety first and foremost.
Yeah, and when we were trading information back and forth online, you identified the job as a spruiker, which I had never seen that word before. That was I thought it was a typo, and I was going to email you and say, what the hell is this? And I went ahead and I'm going to look it up, and it was correct. And it's just that it's not a term that I had ever seen before. So it's, when you're doing that, when you are engaging with the supporters as they're coming into the stadium, are you actually at the gate, or are you somewhere else where you can see the gate through like a closed circuit television camera, that type of thing?
No, I'm out in amongst it, on the coalface.
Okay.
There's a major train station near the stadium, and a lot of the foot traffic will come from the trains. A lot of people catch public transport. It's just easier to do that than to drive into the game. And Marvel Stadium is on the side, is the one end of the city here in Melbourne, and right on the water. And so there's no parking. There's parking underneath the stadium. It's a multi-purpose stadium, so a lot of a professional soccer league plays there, professional cricket league plays there, and also major concerts will go there. We had U2 there recently, and some other big-name acts will come and play there. So there is some parking underneath, but most people come in via public transport. And one of the major train stations, one of the oldest train stations here in Melbourne, is directly adjacent to it, so people within 2 minutes can get off a train and be basically heading towards their gate. And so I'm at a junction that sort of separates. I'm a touch away from the stadium. There's a building in between the stadium and the train station, and I'm on the other side of the stadium on that building. And so people are coming from the train station, and there's a left and a right, just sort of which gates are the best way to go. So I sit on the tennis umpire's chair with a microphone, and try not to sing, try not to do too many Ed Sheeran songs, try to give people laughing as well as they're coming into. Yeah, it depends on what's happened. Sometimes, Melbourne's not really known for its great weather. Sometimes I think it's got a similar climate to somewhere like New York or northern place, or sort of I hear it's a bit like Seattle or Vancouver. So sometimes the sun will be in the sky, but it won't be doing anything. It'll be painted in the sky, but it will still be cold.
Right.
So sometimes
Yes.
it can get down to, I don't know what the equivalent is, I think 4 degrees or 10 degrees Celsius, which I think is somewhere 50 degrees
it's around
Fahrenheit.
50, 52 degrees. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I've started
and there's a massive wind.
I've started doing this. Yeah.
Oh, the conversions. Yeah.
Yeah. I was stationed when I was in the Navy. I was stationed near Seattle. So yes, it's a it's a lot of rainfall there, but actually where I live in Ohio, we actually have more cloud cover and more rain here than they do in Seattle.
Yeah, right.
Seattle has the reputation. Yeah, but we actually get more of it here in Ohio. Which we going back, and this is going back to World War II, we actually built a huge TNT plant here in Ohio because it was further enough away from the coastline that if somebody was to try to attack from the coastline, they couldn't reach this area here.
Wow.
But and it's now it's been converted into a big facility that NASA uses for researching different aspects of their space program. So
yeah, well, there you go.
Yep. So
it certainly does get cold. I've got gloves and about 15 singlets, 10 shirts, 20 jumpers, and a big overcoat, as well as scarf and a beanie, and So it's it's sometimes a bit difficult to try and be funny, especially when you got the same jokes that you've told for the past 2 years. But it's certainly, I don't class it as a job. It's certainly a pleasure to be working in AFL circles, and it's wonderful.
So you make very general statements. You don't find in that setting as as a comedian, you're not using the same type thing where you maybe would focus on somebody in the audience at one of your shows. You're not going to say, this guy over here that's wearing the the green sweatshirt, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to poke fun at him. You're probably not doing that. At the stadium setting.
Every now and again, yes, but you got to be I've got to be careful because my sort of number one rule that I stick by when it comes to this specific sort of job and sort of Marvel Stadium is to make people feel good when they come. You don't know what's happened to them that week or that. So sometimes I haven't got jokes, but I've just got a happy disposition, and we'll say something like, "You've made it through the weekend. Give yourself a pat on the back. Congratulations! The weekend's just about to start. It's Friday night footy. Welcome everyone to Marvel Stadium tonight. And I might do a bit of a rundown about second place taking on third place, that sort of thing. But a weird experience at the beginning of the year. I volunteered my time to do spruiking, to sit out the front and do the outdoor announcing for a match that we had here. I think you mentioned it. I listened to. Congratulations on the podcast too, by the way. I've listened to a couple of episodes. I listened to. What was it? Episode 10, I think, when you talked about I got a lot out of it. NBA influence on the VFL in the 80s and 90s, and free agency, Don Lane, David Stern. I was like, I know all these people. That's fantastic. And a little bit later, good friends of mine, the Kick to Kick Boys, they've got a fantastic podcast. They come on the walking tour with me. Listen to that episode. So congratulations. I'm certainly glad I've stumbled across it. I worked. You mentioned in one of those episodes about a State of Origin match, and I volunteered my time I donated my time to work on that. It was a charity fundraiser for all the, everyone in the world certainly knows about this, the tragic bushfires that we had here in Australia recently, so I worked on that game, and it was truly bizarre seeing. So every now and again, you'll see you're always seeing the two clubs, their Guernseys, their jumpers, their jerseys walking towards you when you're working there at Marvel Stadium. And every now and again, you'll see just some weirdo is wearing another another team, and you're like, good on you, man. You know, you're one of 60,000, and you're here flying the flag for your team, and you don't care. That's awesome. But that night there was just like there were traditional teams traditional rival teams. So I almost fell off my tennis umpire's chair. Felt like a beach lifesaver in Baywatch or something. I saw Collingwood, Essendon, and Carlton, these like 13-year-old boys walking towards the stadium, linked in arms with these stupid big smiles on their face. And I just couldn't get my head around it. I'd mention them. I'd publicly, you know, who's going to win tonight and who's going to get the most goals. And especially that game is a very happy spirit and people are excited. The State of Origin idea has really died down the last couple of years and doesn't seem to be really relevant for the game of AFL. So they've been able to, you know, as you mentioned before, AFLX, and I don't know if that was too successful, but at least they're trying. And I think they're trying to copy the NBA All-Star game, but it doesn't seem to be working as well. Even the NBA All-Star games had to change their format, and this year was tremendous match, tremendous game, fantastic. But they really struck a home run with this game this year. And the game match itself was tremendous and hard fought. And
it was fun.
Yeah, just seeing all these the best of the best, you know, the cream of the crop, and Dusty Martin standing up above all of them still, you know, was incredible. But seeing all these fans I think I saw every single jumper, and I'd make a bit of a joke, but I did try to do it in a lighthearted way. You know, yes, you're the first GWS jumper or the first Gold Coast Suns jumper. Or, you know, when the Suns are playing, you'll talk about, say, St Kilda. They're known as Sainters. Welcome to all you Sainters.
Right.
But if the Suns are playing, like, what would that equivalent be? It would be a Sunner. That's not a thing, you know. It's not. It's just because they're such a young team.
No, that would be.
Yeah. So
what do you?
A Sunner.
That's almost a rhetorical question in terms of what do you call a Sun supporter? Because I don't know if there's an answer to that. Is there? I mean, wouldn't the AFL be a Sun supporter since they've been the ones that have been plunking down all the money to help keep it afloat?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I try to stick away from political and contentious issues. But yeah, but we can all have a laugh when I sort of say, "Oh, here come the three Sunners." You know, like welcome to you, Gold Coast Sunners. Are you guys Sunners? What are you guys? And have a dialogue, you know, with them.
Could they be coasters?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm going to write that down, actually. Yeah, the coasters. Yeah, so it's interesting. And, you know, you get some old traditional Melbourne clubs taking on some younger or out-of-state teams. AFL's very much about Melbourne or Victorian teams versus the rest, you know, the foreigners almost.
Right.
And it's done in a lighthearted way, you know, but it's really... Yeah, I try to be positive because, you know, there's kids and all. Like when I court announce for basketball, if an opposition team member's going up for free throws, I certainly get in there and do a bit of smack talk, but it's always positive. So I always say, welcome, Mr. Sampson to the line. Give him a round of applause. He's just adopted a greyhound this weekend. And so instead of being harsh and nasty, I try to positively trash talk them, you know, and usually once a game I'll get the person who's shooting a free throw or his team on the bench turn around and look at me and give me a really weird look. And I think, my job's done, you know. I'm the sixth man. I'm on the court with them. Gives the crowd a laugh, you know. It's a bit different, and so I get some comedy in there that way. I think it's funny. So see what happens. Still got my job. So
the people who are employing you must be happy with the job you're doing. Exactly.
Yeah. But I certainly do get comedy across in the footy tour. There's plenty of funny Collingwood stories and some horrific stories as well, but certainly some funny stories with the history of the league and some dodgy things that the league has done, and we all got to have a bit of a laugh at it, you know. The ball, when it bounces on the ground, it's not round. It's an unfair bouncing ball. The game is just the same. It's incredibly unfair. So you gotta take the good with the bad and have a laugh whenever you can, you know.
Yeah, It is an absolutely fascinating game, and it's why I fell in love with it. And and I talk about it incessantly here. Not necessarily just on this podcast, but in general. I find myself talking about it more than just about anything else nowadays. So
Yeah, that's nice.
yeah. So what other types of projects do you have going on right now that you're getting ready to come out with once you're actually allowed out of your house?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've got a few. Things have changed massively just as far as projects and money and funding that's available. So having to rethink a lot of the things that I do. Yeah. And I've got sort of, I think, two ideas that I've really settled on at the moment. A web series that I'm working on. I'm sort of a I'm a filmmaker, and so I'm a writer and actor. I was an actor first and foremost, and stumbled into comedy, and that's really, I guess, where my voice is trying to get people to laugh and to talk about some important issues in a lighthearted, funny way. Yeah, and one of the probably next week, I think I've lined up some guests. I'm going to start up. It's kind of what you're doing with AFL, but mine's more sport. It's not AFL specific. It's sport in general. So I'm starting up a new video chat show, which I'm hoping to then turn into a podcast. Talking with friends of mine, interesting friends, so comedians or people that I know that have really interesting careers and do really interesting things that are quite a bit out of the norm, and that are also sport fans as well. And one of the things I'm incredibly fascinated with, and part of the reason I been loving listening to your podcast is it's interviewing people that are do interesting things as well as AFL. And so I'm interested in people, how sport influences their chosen career and how their career influences their chosen sport. If I do a comedy gig and I bomb and it's not good, I like to think in terms of, it was just a bad game. The ball bounced the wrong way. The umpires weren't too lenient on me today, and it's always about next week and think in terms of sporting analogies. And so that's what helps me get through in my sort of professional career. And so, yeah, next week, I think I'm probably going to call it My Life of Sport or something like that. And so I'll just be interviewing people on Instagram and Facebook Live video, and talk to some friends and interested people, some comedians, and going to talk about their favorite club, their favorite sport experience, what they did growing up doing sport as well as their chosen career, and how those two things influence each other. And the second project I'm working on at the moment, you can check out all these things on my website at www.gavin-ingham.com, as well as my social media, Facebook, Insta, and Twitter. Yeah, it's a web series. I'm kind of really fascinated about the online entrepreneurial hustling culture, and especially the American version of that. And in Australia, we're trying to copy that. And so one person in particular, Gary V, which is the biggest online entrepreneur at the moment and will be for a while, I think, and creates a lot of visual content. I kind of liked a lot of what he said, and then found the people who liked him were a certain type of person. And so I've got this idea. I've been shooting it, and Corona's kind of put the shooting on pause. But it's about this budding online entrepreneur who gets this idea. He wants to be like Gary V, and so he goes out and feeds homeless people and promises to make their lives better while the camera's rolling. And it'll all be filmed on mobile phones. So, yeah, it has that sort of, I guess, that hook. And then one of the homeless peoples follows my protagonist home. And then my protagonist, my wannabe Gary V, is forced to actually help this homeless person. And because the videographer that he's employed keeps filming him and sticking him on live videos. So he's forced to actually help the person. And so it's all about humanity and are we actually helping people, and is our lives going online, the image we put online not matching up totally with what's going on, and all about empathy and taking from real sources. There's a spate of videos of all these these life entrepreneurs online who were feeding people, making sandwiches and feeding the homeless, and then videoing that and putting that up. And my question from a comedy point of view was, well, what if one of them follows him home, and says, "You said you're going to help me. Well, help me."
It's fascinating. That is such a unique idea there, because I can definitely see the comedic impact of that, and the whole accountability thing there with, okay, you said you were going to help, here I am, help me.
I'm gluten free. I can't eat that sandwich. So, have you got any other food? Oh, this wasn't in the script. Cut. Oh, you're filming live?
Wow.
Oh, sure, bro. Sure, brother. I'm going to help you out. So it's called Charity, and
brilliant.
I'm filming that. You can check it out on my website, and it's all hopefully all going ahead, and filming with some other comedians who are just. I'm very serious about comedy, and I write and craft jokes, and I can make people laugh and think I'm half decent at it. But these people I'm working with are just naturally brilliant, and sometimes we have to cut because the camera's shaking, and the reason why it's shaking is because I'm filming them and I'm laughing and pissing my pants and crying, and so stop it. You can't be that funny, but do it again, but don't make me laugh. But make me laugh in my head, not out loud. So they're brilliant, and I'm so fortunate to have such funny people working with me who are really, passionate about the idea as well. And the one guy who's playing the homeless guy he's such an idiot. He's so funny. He's just a stupid clown with his hair and this beard, and I'm so fortunate to have Cam come along, and everything he does is funny, and I have to, it's going to be trouble when I have to edit all these hours of brilliance he's done and into 5 or 7 minute episodes. So it's made my life difficult, but in a good way.
Well, maybe you'll have to have longer episodes then. If the quality of the stuff is there, you may have to, you may end up expanding this into longer snippets then too, possibly.
Well, hopefully. The last time we were shooting, a couple of weeks back, we were down near this river, and he just started improvising and talking about like when he was homeless and how him and his other homeless friend went fishing here in this little river, and how a shark came up and they ran into the water and pulled the shark out on the ground and punched the shark because they thought, we're going to cook this. It just went on and on and on, and people were riding past on their bikes, and every time someone would ride past on a bike, he would sort of stop and go, "Hey, Jeff, yep, say hi to Sandra for me." Yep. Anyway, the shark was on the ground, and then a train would go past, and he'd go, "That's the 752 to Sandringham." He was on a roll, and he even said, "That's the midnight train," and I knew where he's going. That's the midnight train to Georgia, and I was just in my head, I was just applauding, going, "You are a bloody genius." So I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. So I didn't jot this one down on our list of things we were going to cover, but we're kind of getting to the point where we're going to wrap this up here. But I want to ask you, who are your favorite comedians? Who do you go and seek out on YouTube or wherever? Who are the people that you love to watch?
Well, this is a tough one because there are some people that I who really respect as comedians, but have done some pretty heinous things in recent times and times a bit previous to that. So I grew up listening to Bill Cosby, and the thing I loved about him is these old records. Like for those young people listening, they were like CDs, which were CDs with these physical things, big black records, and listening to my parents' LP
Victrolas.
Yeah, and I listened to Bill Cosby, and I could just picture everything he was saying, and I had no idea what he looked like at this stage as an 8-year-old, and I was just laughing so hard. And then I guess in recent times, Louis C.K., I'm a big fan of his comedy.
Okay.
So unfortunately, these two gentlemen have done some horrific things. So as people,
Yes.
my opinion is different to them as their art and their comedy. So, but recently, big fan of someone who lives closer to you than me, Dave Chappelle. I'm a big fan of him. He lives in
Oh,
Cleveland.
absolutely. Yeah, he lives right here in Ohio. Yeah.
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
Yep.
big fan of his show and his work, and especially how he touches on some real serious sort of issues, and makes it palatable for people to try to entertain those horrific things that are happening in society and get the conversation
Right.
started rather than
Right.
not talking about. There's some things in Australia that we just don't talk about, and I really appreciate that thing that Dave Chappelle. But he's like a jazz player, I guess, when he performs. He's he riffs and he's playing with the audience, and
That's a great analogy. That's a great analogy because
yeah,
you don't really know where you don't really. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of his last specials, he says this really horrific line as a punchline. He says, I'd love to finish a joke with that. Now I've just got to write the setup," and everyone laughs. And then at the end of the show, he perfectly crafts that horrific line in it, and you laugh. And it's just masterful. He's really masterful in the way that he can say some horrible things, and you're laughing. It's incredible. British comedians, a big fan of British comedians. Ricky Gervais, I'm a big fan of Ricky Gervais, especially his TV show The Office, and lots of different British comedians. And I'm fortunate enough to, a lot of my heroes in the Australian comedy scene, I'm fortunate enough to work with some of them and meet them. And if I'm not working with them, I know them and can, text them and Facebook and message them and ask advice. And some of these people have been doing it for years. And I grew up as a teenager seeing them on TV, and then just through Melbourne comedy, you get to meet them and then become friends. And there's a bit of a, it's a bit like football or a chosen sport. You're kind of family because you understand the stupidity and the greatness of that thing that you both love. And so, and that's a weird one, that's a really weird one to be in the company of some of these people,
Yeah, I had and he may be somebody you may be familiar with from the TV shows, and he's an older gentleman. He's in his 80s now. But if you like the old storytelling that Bill Cosby used to do about how his life and that type of thing, have you ever run into any of Bob Newhart's comedy?
Oh, he's I was that old American sort of, it's not cabaret, but that just stand up, tell the story, and he's wonderful. He's wonderful.
Yeah,
he's fantastic.
He would do a lot of things where he was like doing telephone conversations with people where you would hear one side of the conversation. Some pretty funny things.
Yeah, and you're filling in the blanks of what the person on the other line,
exactly.
Fantastic. And I'm equally love American comedy as stand-up comedy, and as well as I do British. I guess for Australia, that's really how you understand Australia is we're becoming quite American and touching on what we were talking about before with accents. There's a lot of kids now that will say things that is kind of the way Americans will say it. So we say interesting, but kids now will say interesting, put an extra syllable, or they'll say interesting, get rid of that T in the middle. Australian kids will say that. It's because we've got quite a lot of American TV here and education programs. But that's a really good way to understand Australians is and AFL too. We come from an old tradition, Britain, and that's very much the way that we think. But there's this new sort of American flash, like in that AFLX game, all the players turned up in fancy clothes and on their skateboards, motorized skateboards, like the NBA All-Star game, and all the players love the NBA too. So, they're all playing NBA 2K. And so there is that American influence as well, which I think it's a fascinating time for Americans to really get into AFL. And we've toyed with putting names on the backs of jerseys and things like that, and
that would help me out tremendously.
Yeah. Knocking down the playing time, to fit with a more commercial length. And 3 hours is a bit of a crazy time and to be playing football anyway. So knocking down the playing time as well as making it entertaining on days and the TV commercials that happen during when you watch it on TV so it's having an American influence as well. So it's probably a really good way to look at Australian culture, actually, is British traditions and sort of becoming a bit American, which, you guys, British traditions anyway. So it's funny. It's really interesting.
Yeah. So I would like to go ahead and apologize to the Australian people who are listening for, bringing all of that American culture to your country.
No, we love it. We absolutely love it. Netflix, we love it. We absolutely love it.
I've been, I've found, a few Australian TV shows that I've been watching on television here. I've been watching one called Jack Irish that has Guy Pearce in it.
Oh yeah, right.
Really enjoyed that one, and there was a mini series called Mystery Road, which I thought was really well done. That had
the second series has just come out, I think.
Oh, it's out there because it's not here yet, so it's hopefully coming pretty soon. Yeah, but I'm kind of doing the opposite of what you're doing there and finding some Australian culture to learn a little bit more about things, because what's interesting is that the Jack Irish series, because I guess Guy Pearce is a big Cat supporter, from what I've heard, but three of the characters on that show are
they?
Supporters that when they merged when Brisbane merged back in the 80s. Yeah, and these guys were like old school, back in Melbourne and such. But enough about that. I don't want to go into that at all. But I wanted to just I've rambled here. It's getting late where you are right now. I know that because I'm looking at my clock and realizing, holy mackerel.
It's 11:15. I'm not a pumpkin yet. But another series you might want to watch is the Underbelly series. They're a bit cheap and nasty sometimes, and a bit corny, but it's a good way of learning about Australian history and Australian crime and some sort of popular sort of people in our history, and especially especially there's some Melbourne ones as well. So
we're kind of limited in terms of the Australian series that have shown up here. I've run into one that was on, I guess, about a decade ago called City Homicide. That I watched that whole series already too.
Yeah. That's Melbourne, set in Melbourne, isn't it? Is it? Or
I think it is. Yeah, I think it's set in Melbourne. Yeah.
Yeah, we love making Melbourne look like New York. We really really love doing that.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, it's kind of like a Law and Order type version type show for those of you that are listening here in the States. But I think we've covered pretty much everything that we were going to delve into here today, and I and even some topics that we didn't think we were going to get into. And ladies and gents, I'd like to thank my guest Gavin Ingham for joining me for this episode. You can find Gavin and his work at gavin-ingham.com. I'm going to link to all of his social media and that type of thing in the show notes, so you can check those out, as well as some of the other projects that he's working on as well. I'll plug in the YouTube videos as well from the dummies, the Footy for Dummies as well. It is a funny series if you've not had a chance to watch those yet. And if you're listening here in Ohio, there is a Browns reference that I think you'll appreciate.
Good. I was hoping that landed right.
Yeah, it did. Because we're passionate about our team, but we realize the futility that we have achieved. Because going back to the mid 1990s, and I don't know if you know the history or not, but our team left. The owner was trying to get a new stadium built. They built a new stadium for the Cavaliers. They built a new stadium for the Cleveland Indians baseball team. And the football team had been left high and dry. And he took the team and moved it to Baltimore, Maryland, and became the Ravens. Yes, in the mid 90s.
So how did the Browns come back about then? Because the Ravens are still going.
The Ravens are still going. That was one of the things that the the people who were supporters here, the people in government in the city of Cleveland, they were able to keep the team colors, the brown and orange team colors, the team name, all of the team's history, that sort of thing stayed with our team. It just kind of hibernated for 3 years. And then Cleveland was awarded an expansion franchise in 1999.
Oh.
So they came back into the league about 20 years ago. And, it's been a lot of futility. It's been, there's an L in Cleveland, by the way, actually 2 L's in Cleveland. Because, actually there's been a lot of L's. We had a period a couple years ago where we won 1 out of 33 games, I think.
Jeez.
Or one out of 32. I mean, just horrible. Horrible. But they're still filling the stadium, every week.
Yeah. I guess that question of, may not be like a lot of AFL teams as well, may not be successful, but at least we've got a team, someone that represents us.
Yeah. And I think they're getting themselves in the right direction, and hopefully things will be pointed in the right direction this year. Cause Tom Brady is getting old and he's no longer with the Patriots. So maybe it's our time now. No, he's in Florida now. He went to Tampa.
Oh, did he sign with them? I missed that.
Yeah, he signed with Tampa. Yep. Both he and Gronkowski. Yeah.
Oh, meaning that they're out of New England Patriots are out of the way, and that Cleveland can come in and.
Yeah, it's probably not going to happen, but we can always hope. Yeah.
It's always next week. There's always next year. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Okay, so again, I do want to thank Gavin Ingham for coming on to the podcast today. Like I said, I will link to all of his social media and his website in the show notes. Gavin, I appreciate you coming on today. This was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking forward
to school today. Virtual school today.
Oh yeah, that's actually starting here in just a few minutes. Yep, I have my first meeting coming up in about a half an hour. I'm going to make another cup of coffee. Now, your web series that you're doing, the Hustle Philosophy web series, do you have any of those that are posted now? Are those out, or is that still in the works?
On my website, I'm still filming. And I've had to. We had the bushfires here, and had class changes, had to rewrite. So I got all the footage, and I'm still got to finish filming, and then continue, and then get on to post production. But it's all on my website.
Okay.
It's cool. It's called
I'm looking forward to seeing that
series. Yeah, cool.
Okay, I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, awesome. Hey, Gavin, thanks a whole bunch. I appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you so much for bringing me to America.
You bet. Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 21 of A Yank on the Footy with my guest, Gavin Ingham. I honestly cannot tell you how humbled I feel knowing that you are tuning in to listen to my show. I can't thank you enough. If you're enjoying the podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you would share it with your friends and family. You can find links to the show in the show notes, or they can simply type in A Yank on the Footy in their favorite search engine. Don't forget that while you can find all the episodes of this podcast at ayankonthefooty.podbean.com, you can also find it on that favorite podcast provider of yours. Now that you've listened, I would love it if you'd consider giving me a review on the podcast host that you're using. It lets me know what I need to work on, what I'm doing well, and it lets the podcast host know what you think of the show. Don't forget you can reach me at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com, as well as on Twitter at yank_on, and on Facebook and Instagram at ayankonthefooty. Also, I'd like to thank Mr. Joseph McDade for the use of 2 of his great pieces of music. Mr. McDade's creating some fantastic music, and I'm using the pieces Elevation and Winter's Mist. You can reach him at josephmcdade.com/music. Again, Mr. McDade, thanks again for your hard work and your wonderful music. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank Gavin Ingham for being our guest for this episode. You can find out more about Gavin at www.gavin-ingham.com. That's GAVIN-INGHAM.com. While many of us are fans of our teams, deep down we're fans of a game that we all love, and that's the game of footy. And ladies and gentlemen, we are at a strange point in the history of this planet. I hope that you and your family stay safe, that you're able to take the proper measures to protect yourselves against this virus. Be tolerant of one another. Be kind to one another. Love one another. Call your family. Get on with FaceTime with them. Talk to them. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I ask that you share this podcast with your friends and family, and may your dribble kick never hit the post. I'll catch you later. This has been episode 21 of A Yank on the Footy. My guest was comedian Gavin Ingham. Don't forget that you can reach me at yank_on or at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram and on Facebook at A Yank on the Footy. Again, thanks for listening, and please consider sharing this podcast with your friends and family.